Hello, everyone. Father John Ogra will be celebrating the Mass tomorrow morning. I usually also record a homily the day before. So I'm going to do a reflection. This is going to be kind of a shorter homily. I look forward to seeing what Father John will preach tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. That'll be live streamed on YouTube, which of course you're all welcome to watch. Father John will be going away here for a couple months. He's finishing his coursework. He's supposed to graduate here soon, I think next Friday. And then he'll be away for a couple months. And then he'll be back hopefully in July. When I go away for 2 weeks, he'll be covering for me. So he's not leaving for good yet. But stay tuned for that Mass. I did want to reflect a little bit on the second reading for this weekend, which I'll read for you now. It's from 1 Peter, the first letter of Peter, chapter 2, verses 20 through 25. If you are patient when you suffer for doing what is good, this is a grace before God. For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his footsteps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. When he was insulted, he returned no insult. When he suffered, he did not threaten. Instead, he handed himself over to the one who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body upon the cross, so that free from sin we might live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. For you had gone astray like sheep, but you have now returned to the shepherd and guardian of your souls. The wisdom of our first Pope, St. Peter, comes through very clearly in this reading and in his letters. And it's a wisdom about the role of suffering in our lives. All of us are suffering to some degree right now because of this pandemic, being quarantined, being locked inside of our houses for so many weeks, and we still don't know how much longer this is going to go. I don't even know when we're going to have Mass again in the church where people can attend. So we are suffering, but our Christian faith gives us so much hope, so much meaning, so much of a good way to look at the suffering in our lives. In some ways of thinking out there, some people think, well, Jesus suffered for us so that we don't have to. That's one kind of Christian theology that's out there, a pop theology. And St. Peter's kind of saying the opposite. It's that Jesus suffered for us so that we can learn how to suffer well. That makes sense of the Beatitudes, for example. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are those who suffer persecution for the sake of righteousness. All of this connects us to Christ. All of the suffering that we experience can have meaning and value as long as we accept that and see it that way and offer it to the Lord. That's what Peter is saying here when he says, if you are patient when you suffer for doing what is good, this is a grace before God. Suffering for doing what is good is a grace before God. How often do we see when somebody suffers for doing what is good, how often do we see it as a horrible thing, a tragedy? Currently, I'm experiencing some suffering for doing what is good. Actually, now that I think about it. And the way for me to understand it is that this is a grace before God. This unites me with Christ. It's a pretty amazing reality that because of Jesus, all of the crap that we go through in life can have meaning and purpose and value. And Peter even tells us that it's a grace. It's a grace. The grace is like the highest thing in the scriptures, in the New Testament. Like grace is what you want. Grace is the presence of God. Grace is God's life in you, transforming you, making you a disciple, strengthening you, bringing you to eternal salvation. It is grace that saves us. We are saved by grace alone. And Peter's telling us, when we suffer for doing what is good, that is a grace before God. That type of suffering saves us, in a sense, because grace saves us, and Peter tells us that it's a grace to suffer for doing what is good. By his wounds you have been healed. Think of the irony of that. By the wounds of Jesus we are healed. And Peter kind of calls out the image of Jesus as the good shepherd right after this. For you had gone astray like sheep, but you have now returned to the shepherd and guardian of your souls. Jesus is the shepherd and guardian of our souls. And by his wounds you have been healed. You can imagine the ancient shepherds, and even, I guess, modern shepherds, when a sheep goes astray, or when the sheep are in danger by wolves. I wonder sometimes how many shepherds have all kinds of wounds and cut marks on their legs, trying to kick the wolves away to protect the sheep. By the wounds of our good shepherd, we have been healed. We are defenseless without Jesus. We have no protection without Jesus. We have no safety without Jesus. And I'm not talking about like worldly safety, this being safe from diseases or things like that. I'm talking about safety from that which can cause us eternal damage and eternal harm in hell. Jesus is the one who provides safety for us. And being our good shepherd, he has to kick away the wolves for us. He has to protect us from all of the predators out there. And there was a cost to that for him. And it is demonstrated in his wounds, his 5 wounds. By his wounds, we have been healed. We should often think of the sufferings that Jesus went through for us. And then the sufferings that we're going through now, even and especially the sufferings that we don't deserve, which is what Peter is talking about in this passage. If you're a patient when you suffer for doing what is good, this is a grace before God. All of those sufferings, we should remember that Jesus suffered for us to give us an example, and that we've never suffered to the level that he has. Because he is the one who has the power to protect us from the most dangerous predators, those that are trying to prey upon our souls, which are the demons. He can protect us from them. And he does constantly protect us from them, especially through the sacraments. My friends, I hope that these thoughts, this little homily that I've just given you, helps you through the next couple of weeks. I pray that we can all make sense of the stuff that we're going through, the suffering that we're going through, which may feel like it's not deserved. But Peter gives us this incredibly comforting words full of hope and meaning, that when we suffer for doing what is good, it's a grace before God. And the grace before God is that which we need most and what we want most, because it is the grace of God that leads us to a happiness and a joy that will never end in the kingdom of heaven. May God love you.